First example is 3 square root of 12. This time you have a constant out to the left multiplied against the radical 12. So keep that 3 where it's at, but simplify the 12, the square root of 12. What's the highest square root that will, or highest perfect square that will go into 12? We have 4, 9, and we can't go any higher than that. 4 goes into it, yeah. Square root of 4 times the square root of 3 would give me square root of 12. And then square root of 4 is 2. And then you simplify that 3 times 2 on the left. Make it a 6. So in review, break up your square root of 12. The highest perfect square is 4 that goes into it. That's why we break it up as square root of 4 times square root of 3. And the square root of 4 is 2. So now simplify by multiplying 3 times the 2 to get 6. Your whole answer is 6 square root of 3. In this problem we have 10 square root of 24. Step 1 is to leave the 10 where it's at and break up the square root of 24. Now for 24 we can only try 4, 9, 16, but anything higher than that is higher than 24, so it won't go in. 16 won't go in, neither will 9, so it is 4. Square root of 4 times what? Square root of 6, and the square root of 4 is 2, and now you multiply 10 times 2 to get 20. What we did is we broke up the square root of 24 as square root of 4, square root of 6. We came up with the 4 because it's the highest perfect square that goes into it. Half of 24 is 12. We really shouldn't even go any higher than this to test. Square root of 4 is 2. Multiply the 2 by the 10 that was with it, and you get 20 square root of 6. Solution for the practice, keep the 12, break up the square root of 20. We can try 4, 9, and that's about it. 9 won't go into it. 4 does. So it's square root of 4, square root of 5 that will get you a 20. And simplify the square root of 4 to get 2, and then multiply 2 by 12 to get 24, square root of 5. 16 square root of 48. Solution for this one, keep the 16 and break up the square root of 48. Half of 48 is 24, so we can go up to, that's about it, 4, 9, and 16. 4 will go into it, but it's not the highest one. 16 is. Square root of 16 times the square root of 3. And simplify the square root of 16 to get 4, and multiply by 16 to get 64, square root of 3. 8 square root of 40. Step 1, keep your 8 and then break up the square root of 40. We can try 4, 9, 16, but half of 40 is 20, so we can't really go any higher than that. Try this first, 16, but it doesn't work. 9 won't go into it, but 4 will. So it's the square root of 4, square root of 10. 8 times 2 is going to be 16, square root of 10. I have 3 over the square root of 2. Just like you can't write a 1 next to an x, and you can't have a power of 1 on an x that you write, you can't have a square root in the denominator of a fraction. So to get rid of it, what you do is multiply the top and the bottom by that exact same square root. On the top, you have 3 square root of 2. On the bottom, you'll have square root of 2 times square root of 2. What do I get when I multiply these two together? Square root of 2 times square root of 2. What's 2 times 2? 4. So I have the square root of 4. But what is the square root of 4? Square root of 4 is what? 2. And there's your answer. You've eliminated the square root sign on the bottom. Something to remember is that anytime you multiply something by itself, in terms of square roots, if you multiply square root of 3 by itself, the answer is the number under the sign. If you multiply square root of 11 by itself, the answer is just 11. That's why we're multiplying top and bottom here, so that we can eliminate the square root sign there. Six over the square root of 5. To get rid of the square root sign on the bottom, you multiply the top and the bottom by the same thing. This doesn't change the value of it because what you're really doing is multiplying by 1, something over itself. But it will get rid of the square root sign. On the top, it's 6 square root of 5. And on the bottom, square root of 5 times square root of 5 is just 5. 6 square root of 5 over 5 is the answer. Alright, in this problem, we're going to have 12 over the square root of 12. 12 over the square root of 12. In this case, you can do one of two things. You can multiply the top and the bottom by square root of 12 and do what we did before, or from now on you have to pay attention to what's under that square root sign. Can the square root of 12 be simplified before we do anything else? Is there a perfect square that goes into 12? Which one? 4, yeah. You can break that up first. So the square root of 12 is the same as square root of 4 square root of 3. And then, of course, the square root of 4 is just 2. So before we've done anything else, you break up that square root of 12 into 4 and 3, and the square root of 4 is 2. So now our new problem is 12 over 2 square root of 3. Is there anything I can reduce in this before I get going? What about 12 over 2? What does 12 over 2 reduce down to? 6. So you would just have a 6 on the top and the square root of 3 on the bottom. And now you can go on to the problem that you did before. What do I multiply the top and the bottom by to get rid of this square root? Square root of 3. So when I do that, I get 6 square root of 3 over 3. Remember, this times itself is just 3. Can I simplify 6 over 3? What is 6 divided by 3? 2. So you have a 2 on the top, nothing on the bottom. These have canceled out. So your final answer is 2 square root of 3. That's a lot to do in one setting, so I think what we'll do is we'll just simply practice some reducing like this and this. I'll give you a problem that looks just like that, and you just have to reduce it. Then we'll work our way up to the next step. The problem is 24 over 6 square root of 3. If I just want to reduce, before I multiply by any square roots, then how can I reduce 24 over 6? 4, yeah, 24 divided by 6 is 4. So I'm left with 4 over the square root of 3. Now if I want to continue on the problem and simplify it, I have to multiply the top and the bottom by the square root of 3. So on the top you have 4 square root of 3, and on the bottom, remember that this times itself is just 3. Can I reduce 4 over 3? No. So there's your final answer. For the practice problem, you must multiply the top and the bottom by the square root of 10. On the top, it's square root of, or not square root, but 4 square root of 10, and on the bottom, you simply have a 10. The next thing we're going to go over is when you get an answer like this, you have to take a look at this number and this number and treat it as a fraction. If you can reduce them, then you have to go ahead and do that. 4 over 10, the highest number that goes into 4 and 10 would be 2. So you can cut the 4 down in half, make it a 2, and then on the bottom, make this a 5. So your real final answer on this would be 2 square root of 10 over 5. Try this one. This is 12 over 8 square root of 2. Step 1 on this problem is to look at the 12 over 8. Let's see if we can reduce that first. 4 goes into 12 3 times and into 8 twice. So now we have 3 over 2 square root of 3. And what we can do is multiply the top and the bottom by the square root of 3. And when we multiply the top by the square root of 3, we get 3 square root of 3. And on the bottom, square root of 3 times square root of 3 is just 3. But you still have this 2 here. So multiply it by 2 to get 6. And then after that, you have 3 over 6 you can still reduce. 3 and 6 is the same as 1/2. No need to write the 1 on top, just put a 2 on the bottom. Square root of 3 over 2 should be the final answer.